Well, who's going to break first in federal court in Fort Pierce, Florida? Federal Judge Aileen Cannon, the Trump appointee who dismissed his indictment in Mar-a-Lago, or the would-be assassin Ryan Routh, who's representing himself before a jury on charges of attempted assassination of a presidential candidate, possessing a firearm as a felon, and using a firearm in the commission of a crime. He's representing himself, and Aileen Cannon is struggling to maintain decorum, or what she called not allowing him to make a mockery out of the court. I don't think that's what he's doing at all. I think he's proving his case that he's entitled to the insanity defense. I'm Michael Popok. You're here on Legal AF. In the wake of what happened to Charlie Kirk, the murder of Charlie Kirk, we've got a real live attempted assassination trial going on in federal court in Florida. Who else would be picked to preside over it randomly but Donald Trump's favorite Florida federal judge, Aileen Cannon? Let's break it all down for you right here on Legal AF. Take a moment, hit the free subscribe button on this Friday afternoon. All right, let's go back in the time machine a bit. Butler, Pennsylvania happens in June of 2024 while Donald Trump is running for office. But later in September of 2024, he's playing golf at the Palm Beach International Golf Course near his home in Mar-a-Lago. He's on the 5th hole, but ahead of him, unbeknownst to him, on the 6th hole in a bush with an AK-47 or assault rifle's barrel sticking out of the bush is Ryan Routh, a 59-year-old contractor, former felon who had it in for Donald Trump. Just ahead, there is a Secret Service agent who is in a golf cart, spots a weapon, the barrel of a weapon sticking out of a bush near the 6th hole. His name is Secret Service agent Robert Furcano. Now, what happened in court during opening statement? Prosecutors are there from the Department of Justice. They tell the jury in the opening, it's not about whether you like or you dislike Donald Trump. If they're saying that, it is probably because members of the jury are not automatically MAGA. We're talking about the Southern District of Florida. It spans Fort Pierce all the way down to West Palm Beach and even into Boca Raton. It stops right in Broward County. It's big. It's a couple of counties. There's lots of people in there who are blue, who don't like Donald Trump. So picking the jury was difficult. And the fact that the prosecutors had to do that in their opening, and I've done dozens of opening statements in front of juries, means that they think they've got people in there that they are worried about, that they weren't able to get rid of through a jury selection process, through what we call voir dire, or what we call getting peremptory and other challenges to remove jurors. So that's the hand that's been dealt to the Department of Justice. On the other side, you got Ryan Routh, who decides he's going to be pro se, meaning he doesn't have counsel, meaning he fired his federal public defenders. They're standby counsel, meaning they're around watching what's happening, but he is running his own case. So where did the mockery come in? You got a jury sitting there, and you got a crazy guy who's demonstrating he's crazy, and you got Judge Cannon, who we know is sort of a slightly, what's the word I'm looking for? Slightly thin-skinned in her approach, who stops his Ryan Routh's opening statement after 5 minutes and cancels it. Now, I'm going to talk about that from an appeal standpoint, but apparently during it, he was talking about Adolf Hitler. Hitler seems to be on everybody's mind lately, right? It was on the group that found Donald Trump at a restaurant, Joe Stone Crab in D.C. with a bunch of other fat cats from his administration, started chanting that he was Hitler. By the way, I think who started Donald Trump as Hitler as a meme was J.D. Vance while he was out pushing his book, Hillbilly Elegy, when he called Donald Trump Hitler. But that's for another day. Donald Trump mentions Hitler when he does whatever that speech was supposed to be in the White House about Charlie Kirk. And now you've got Ryan Routh talking to the jury about Hitler, along with things like evolution and global politics and the rest of it. So after all of that, and interrupting him 2 or 3 times in front of the jury, Aileen Cannon, again struggling here, cancels Routh's opening statement. Now, let's take it on an appeal standpoint. I think he's doing all this craziness. And when you hear some of his cross-examination questions today of government witnesses, you're going to say, this guy is mad as a hatter. But that's when you act like that, and which is effectively testimony without having to testify. So maybe he's as dumb as a fox, I guess is the phrase. Because here he doesn't have to testify, but he's testifying because he's saying things out loud and acting in a certain way, supporting an insanity defense. If he's smart, he then brings in the federal public defenders towards the end of the case to make the closing argument, look at the jury and say, you saw the guy. You saw the questions he asked. He was so bad the judge had to cancel his opening statement after 5 months when he mentioned Adolf Hitler. Is he in his right mind? Vote to acquit on an insanity defense. That's where this could end up being. Now, on an appeal, it's not a great thing that Aileen Cannon lost control of the courtroom and canceled the guy's opening statement. I mean, you're not entitled to a perfect trial, but you're entitled to a fair trial. And you're entitled to be able to communicate your position pro se, and the judge is supposed to guide you through that and bend over backwards not to do things like canceling your opening statement or cut you off or embarrass you in front of the jury. So far, she's violating all of those cardinal sins, giving him great grounds for an appeal. So again, he may be mad as a hatter, but he also might be outsmarting the judge because he's demonstrating his entitlement to an insanity defense. At the same time, he's laying the groundwork for an appeal as she misfires on no, sorry, that was unintended. As she makes wrong-headed decisions about his legal position, which give him grounds for an appeal. Now, let me tell you what else he did in his cross-examination. He gets the agent, Robert Furcano, and who's the one that saw so what happened is Robert Furcano sees the barrel of the gun out of the bush on the 6th hole. He starts yelling into his communications device, his walkie-talkie, we got an active shooter, we got a shooter, shootings. He sees the guy, he fires his weapon after the guy points the barrel of the weapon at him. Finally, the guy, Routh, drops his weapon and starts to run, where some good Samaritan sees him get into a car. So he actually says to his agent Furcano, he says, you feel good to be alive, right? In other words, I didn't blow your head off. Furcano's like, yes. And he says, do you know what my mindset was? He says, no, but I know you pointed the gun at my face. So again, this doesn't help him from the elements of the crime, but it does continue to demonstrate that he's out of his mind, I guess is the right way to put it. He then gets Tom McGee up on the stand, another government witness, who was effectively the good Samaritan that chased down a disheveled Robert Routh after he dropped the gun and ran, took down his license plate, and led to his apprehension and capture. So in the cross-examination, Routh says to McGee, you're an American hero. This is the guy that led to his capture and his apprehension. So I go back where I started this hot take from a trial lawyer perspective. He may be as mad as a hatter, but he's crazy as a fox because he is laying the groundwork without having to waive his Fifth Amendment privilege to getting his insanity defense. All he has to do is transition his defense back to his defense counsel, let the public defenders do their job, and look the jury in the eye in the closing and say, look at the guy. Anybody in their right mind ask somebody that led to his capture, say to him, you're an American hero. And say to the other guy, you feel lucky to be alive, don't you? That's the actions of a madman. Don't convict or find him not guilty by reason of insanity. On the other hand, so he does that without violating his Fifth Amendment. On the other hand, he's acting out so much in the courtroom that Aileen Cannon is making mistakes that may be reversible error to reverse any future conviction. That's what happens when you have sort of a weak-minded federal judge who's not very good at her job, which we saw during the Trump trials, handling this case. If I were her, I would have recused myself and disqualified myself from hearing the case. Why? Not just because she's a Trump appointee. That's not enough. Judges come from somewhere. All judges come from some president. No. Because not only was she presided over this historically wrong decision of hers to find that the special counsel was improperly appointed and therefore the whole indictment against Donald Trump for obstruction and espionage act should be tossed, but it's public knowledge that she was on the short list to be the Attorney General in the Department of Justice, and she still might be if Pam Bondi doesn't survive. That was public and never refuted by the Trump administration, ever. In fact, when Donald Trump filed his case against Rupert Murdoch and the Wall Street Journal, he skipped Aileen Cannon completely and filed it way down in Miami to avoid getting her. I have a theory about that. He ended up getting Darren Gales, who's a very fine judge in Miami, who I know well from my practice, a phenomenal judge. Also the judge that was the presiding judge over the Michael Cohen defamation case that ended in a dismissal by Donald Trump. But he could have filed it where he lives, Donald Trump, which is Palm Beach County. The closest box there, he would have checked the box for West Palm Beach, because that's how the Southern District of Florida is divided by division. There's the Fort Pierce division where there's one judge, Aileen Cannon. There's the West Palm Beach division where there's 3 judges, including occasionally Aileen Cannon, Judge Rosenberg, Judge Cannon, and Judge Middlebrooks, who's senior status. Fort Lauderdale, Southern District of Florida, right? Fort Lauderdale, and then down to Miami. So you check boxes on your filing. Clerk doesn't have to abide by them, but the easy box to check would have been West Palm Beach. He would have had a 1 in 3 shot of getting Aileen Cannon, but he picked Miami, which is 70 miles south of where he lives. Why? Because it's odd. They didn't do it by accident. I saw the box. I saw the check mark. Because I think they wanted to avoid getting Aileen Cannon, because at the time, Pam Bondi was on thin ice and could have been dismissed, which would have made Aileen Cannon a candidate. Aileen Cannon's also been speculated to be on the short list for the United States Supreme Court. So should she be presiding over the assassination attempt? Probably not. We'll continue to follow what happens next in the trial and whether he gets the insanity defense and insanity acquittal as I proposed. If they're smart enough, that's how they'll do it. Here on Legal AF, take a moment, hit the free subscribe button, do the same thing, come over to Legal AF Substack and help us continue to grow that community. We're so close to 800,000. We're about 8,000 short. 7,000 short to get to 800,000 subscribers on Legal AF. Be the 800,000 subscriber. Help us get there before our September 17th birthday. Until my next hot take, I'm Michael Popok. I'm Michael Popok, and I got some big news for our audience. Most of you know me as the co-founder of Midas Touch's Legal AF and the Legal AF YouTube channel, or as a 35-year national trial lawyer. Now, building on what we started together on Legal AF, I've launched a new law firm, the Popok Firm, dedicated to obtaining justice through compassionate and zealous legal representation. At the Popok Firm, we are focused on obtaining justice for those who have been injured or damaged by a life-altering event, by securing the highest dollar recoveries. I've been tirelessly fighting for justice for the last 35 years, so my own law firm organically building on my Legal AF work just feels right. And I've handpicked a team of top-tier trial fighters and settlement experts throughout all 50 states known as big auto injury attorneys who have the know-how to beat heartless insurance companies, corporations, government entities, and their attorneys. Big Auto's attorneys working with my firm are rock stars in their respective states and collectively responsible for billions of dollars in recoveries. So if you or a loved one have been on the wrong side of a catastrophic auto, motor vehicle, rideshare, or truck accident, suffered a personal injury, or been the victim of medical malpractice, employment harassment or discrimination, or suffered a violation of your civil and constitutional rights, then contact the Popok Firm today at 1-877-POPOK-AF or by visiting my website at www.thepopokfirm.com and fill out a free case evaluation form. And if we determine that you have a case and you sign with us, we don't get paid unless you do. The Popok Firm, fighting for your justice every step of the way.